Hi there, it's Simon Hurley, and I'm a 15-year-old card maker here at Scrapbook.com. Today we're going to be coloring with alcohol markers, and I'm going to show you the perfect place for a beginner to start without making it too overwhelming. So here are the alcohol markers all around me. They're a little bit confusing when you first look at them, but I'm going to explain it all in detail for you guys. So all these different alcohol markers have the colors at the end labeled, and it also has a letter and a couple numbers nearing the end. And typically you want to stick with the same letter at the beginning. Now you could stray away from that if you want to work a little bit harder to blend together, but mostly the same letter will blend really nicely together. So I've sorted them out into 3 piles, and you can see I have all of the blues together here that are in a similar color family. Same thing with the greens. And then I have some of the darker tones and oranges all together here. And you can tell that it's in the same color family when it has the same letter at the beginning. And so that's how you know that it'll blend really nicely together. But you can also test out the colors beforehand on a different sheet of cardstock. That way you don't mess up your project if the colors don't go exactly how you would like them to. Alcohol markers are a great coloring medium that's different than the rest because you get some great results and there's no real drying time to it, so you get those great results right away with some really opaque, bright colors, and you can color in your projects really simply and easily. And they also have some great blending capabilities, and you can create some cool effects. For this, I like to use the alcohol ink blending pen. This is similar to these alcohol markers where you fill it up with alcohol blending solution. And once that's all filled up, it has that solution on the inside to kind of blend the markers together. There's a brush tip right here, which is kind of like these markers. And there's also a little fine nib if you want to get into some of those details. And you can create some texture on the animals using this, and I'll show you that in just a little bit as well. For all my stamping today, I'm going to be using Memento Tuxedo Black ink. This is great because it doesn't bleed with any alcohol markers when you're coloring with it, so it gives you a nice crisp black line when you're stamping. So I'm going to use this party animal stamp set from Lawn Fawn to start out with. And I'm going to take my little critters I want to use, so that little deer and the polar bear. And I'm also going to take a birthday hat and some little presents you can make them hold in their hand, and a cake as well. So I'm going to line these 2 images up so it looks like they're standing next to each other ready to head off to a fun party. And I'm going to pick that up with an acrylic black. So those are stuck on there together. And then for these smaller little images, I'm just going to kind of cluster them together and stamp them down. There's no real rhyme or reason to this because we're going to be cutting them out later. So then I'm just going to pull a piece of 110-pound white cardstock. This is what we've been using for all of our stamping, and we're going to stamp down onto this. So I'm using that Memento Tuxedo Black ink so our alcohol markers won't smear. And I'm going to start off by stamping down these images on this separate piece of cardstock, and then I'm going to be using the actual card panel that I'm going to stamp on, and I'm going to use my Memento ink as well to stamp down these 2 little critters right onto the card. And then I'm going to give it some nice pressure, and you've got some clean, crisp images here that you can start coloring in. To color all these images in, I'm using the Brea Reese alcohol markers, and these are a great marker for anyone, but especially if you're just starting out in card making. They're not too overwhelming, and they still give really great results when you're coloring in. So I'm just going to color kind of in the image wherever there would be a little space or where his ear meets his head. I'm going to create a little shadow there. And when his head meets his body, I'm going to create a little shadow there because it would cast the shadow down if there was a light coming from above him. I always like to do my shading just kind of all around the image and create my own lines here, and some stamp companies will even have some lines inside of their image created for you where you can create some of the shading there, and that makes it just a little bit easier as well. To get these markers to blend, since they're pretty similar to each other, all you have to do is just kind of color over top of that darker color a little bit with this lighter one, and it kind of blends together. But if you're struggling with that just a little bit, and if your marker doesn't want to blend, you could bring back in that darker color and touch the tip of the lighter color to the darker one. This way you get some of that darker color on that tip, and it helps the markers blend together a little bit more if you're having troubles with that. Then I'm coming in with the last color here, which is the lightest one, and just kind of blending all that together. And you can go over top of those darker colors as well, and it'll kind of help that all blend together pretty nicely and give that tone of that lighter color that it has. So for the parts of his stomach and his head, I want to make a little bit lighter. I'm still staying in the same letter family here with the colors, and I'm just going to kind of go around to create little shadows around here, kind of around his mouth and his eyes, and in his ears as well, and on his little stomach there. And I'm going to show you kind of how to blend this all out, because it might look a little bit weird right now, but you can get some really cool results with this. So then I'm going to grab the alcohol blending pen. I'm going to go for the fine tip side here, and you just go up right against that lighter color, and you can kind of blend that out, and it pulls some of that color into the center there. And if you want to go back with that same color again and add some more and keep blending that together, you definitely can if you want a little bit of a darker result there. So I'm going back in with that marker and blending that back out again. And you can do that as many times as you need until you get your desired result. And I love how that looks, how it blends out into that white. Then I'm moving into the gray families just to do his little antlers here. And if you want, you can even blend those out into white as well, going up to the top. Then to do this little polar bear here, he's going to be a mainly white animal when you're coloring him in, but you want to add some cool shading to it. So I'm using a gray marker here, and I'm just going to add some shading around his arms and kind of where that line is that the company made, and around his eyes, and wherever anything meets his body, so like his ears there as well, and the arms would cast a shadow down to the legs. You don't need to be too precise when you're coloring this in, because I'm going to come in with this alcohol blending pen again, and I'm just going to blend this out. This time I'm going to use the brush tip since it's a little bit bigger and it'll go faster since we're coloring a larger surface area. And that'll really nicely blend that gray right out into that white to make your polar bear kind of seem white, but he still has some nice shading to him. So after I'm all done with that, I'm going to come in with Y000, which is a super light yellow color. And I'm just going to add some yellow tint kind of to his snout there and his ears. And I'm also just going to add it kind of just around the little bear here to give it some highlights and kind of make it stand out in some places than others. And then I can blend that out with the alcohol blending pen again. And this kind of doubles the life of your markers, because if you want it all to blend out into white, you can use this and you get some really cool effects with it, and you can kind of make your own colors. Now, if you want to take the fine tip portion of the marker to give some texture to these little animals, you can take it and just point it kind of up like this, and you can add some little dots of this alcohol blending solution, which will create a texture on your animals. And that's really fun to do and create your own little patterns and designs. And it kind of almost gives the look of fur for this little reindeer here. So I want to make this look like these little animals are standing on something here. So I'm going back with that gray marker, and I'm just going to go under these little images and kind of color a little shadow of them. It's kind of just scribbling onto the cardstock here and just making it look like there's a little shadow of the animals right beneath them. And you don't need to be perfect with this. Just kind of create little scribbles out into nothing, and then you can blend this out with your blender marker here using that nice brush tip, and then you can blend that out into your background. And that just creates a nice grounding place for these animals so it doesn't look like they're floating and not standing on anything. So then I'm going to color in these little pieces here. So for this birthday hat, I'm going to use some blue tones, going in with that fine nib here, and just kind of adding a little shadow around it. Then I'm going to go in with that second darkest color and blend that color out by going over top of it a little bit. And then going in with that last color here, I'm going to blend all those colors out. And you get a really fun shaded effect there. Then I'm going to quickly cut out my images here, so I'm just going to go right around the image and make a little border. Now some sets have coordinating dies to them, but I'm just going to do some quick cutting and leave a little white border around the image so that it stands out and we can pop it up off the card. I also find that moving your paper rather than moving the scissors gets a little bit of a smoother line, so if that helps you cut, that's awesome. Now that I've got these little images cut out, I'm going to use little pieces of foam tape to pop them up off the card. And this is just an extra detail you can do. But it makes for a really fun card just to pop up that little cake in his hand and the present here. And then I'm going to add this little birthday hat onto that polar bear's head as well. Then to give this card a sentiment, I'm going to grab the Make-A-Wish out of this stamp set. And I'm just going to lay this out on my surface and pick it up with an acrylic block. And then I can stamp it down using that same Memento Tuxedo black ink. Just laying it up and giving it some nice pressure so it stamps well on our card. Then I'm going to take some tape runner adhesive and flip my panel over here and add some to the back. And I'm going to add some brown cardstock underneath this. So this will go down the card lengthwise, and it just gives a nice little border there. So I'm going to flip it over again and add some more adhesive. And then I have a top folding card base here, and I can just add this card panel right onto it. And there's your finished card once it's all adhered. I think it looks pretty awesome with that alcohol marker blending and coloring. I think that the possibilities are endless with these markers, and you can do so many cool, fun effects with them and create some really awesome cards. I can't wait to see all of your card creations in the gallery, and I'll see you guys very soon for the next class.